What was the scene like at the log cabin, and how did you end up living there?
Right. Well, Frank invited me to go and live there and work with him at the log cabin. I had already found out that he was married and had a young child, because in London he hadn't told me that. So I went
Right.
to New York to see him, thinking I was going to go and see this wonderful man I'd met, because I was knocked out by him. I have to tell you that the thing that knocked me out, apart from his gorgeous eyes, was the fact that he listened to me. I mean, during that discussion we had, he actually communicated with me, which in 1967, it's hard for anyone to know what it was like then. Men, or at least uneducated, university women, did not get listened to, especially not a secretary and someone, I worked for all these people. They just dictated their work, you took it down, you went out the door, nobody took any notice of you. So for him to actually to have a discussion with me and take notice of what I said, he didn't dismiss it. He actually took in, well, why was it immoral? It wasn't immoral. We had a proper discussion about it. And I was knocked out by that. The first time a man had shown any interest in me as a person, as a brain who had something to say. So he told me that it was a log cabin. It had 7 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, and it had a pool. And I thought I was going to a real Hollywood home with white carpets and white sofas. And and when I got there the day before he arrived, I walked in, and in my room there were holes this big, and there were pipes showing through, and the door, the walls, white walls, painted walls, were filthy. So I got to bed that night, and when I woke up, I thought, well, Frank is going to arrive today, and he is going to say, oh, this is terrible. We'll move out. We'll get another proper Hollywood home. Frank arrived. It was totally not what I expected. He was thrilled because Log Cabin was the center of Laurel Canyon, and the other rock stars were all living in little houses in Laurel Canyon. And this was a massive place, massive. I mean, the living room was 60 foot long by 20 foot. And there were all these bedrooms, but they were all wrecked because the previous people living there were all the freaks, and they'd had a party of 600 people or something the week before. So it had been completely wrecked. So anyway, Frank was unfazed. I followed him around with my notebook and pad, taking what repairs would be made, all new fittings in the kitchen. My room would be done, and a recording studio built in the basement. And we're knocked down these walls, we're knocked down. He was thrilled to bits with the whole thing of being like the king of Laurel Canyon, really. That's how it was.
That's
But
interesting.
the paradox was that he didn't like it once he got there. He didn't like it because everyone came in to see him and he wasn't interested. But I'll get to that. I'll get to that later.
Sure.
So the house was not what I wanted, but I did eventually make my room. I painted it myself. I did the ceiling. I filled the holes. I put paper over it. I painted over it. I made it into the best room in the house, and Frank used it for all his meetings.
Oh, that's funny. And you also had said that a lot of people had come through the log cabin, a lot of rock stars and stuff like that. Can you explain how that was, and briefly how Frank took it with all
Right.
the
Well,
attention?
the log cabin had lots of doors to the outside, and none of them had locks. None of them. So this was before the Manson murders, when everything got changed. This was a free and easy, very happy, lovely area. Everyone was friendly, walked through each other's doors. That's how it was. So um, when he arrived on the Sunday, the first day, Joni Mitchell and David Crosby came to see him. And then there was a series of lots of different people came. I didn't know who they were because I didn't know anything about rock stars. And that's why Frank employed me, because I was not a groupie. So that was his appeal. He didn't want a groupie as a secretary who had all the rock stars, chase. So I didn't know. Anyway, Joni Mitchell came, but they told me the next day, but I really didn't know who she was. And
Right.
then the other people came. Captain Beefheart came all the time, but he was a friend of Frank's, so he had more reason to be there. And he stayed overnight, 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the morning, talking about the blues. And I wish I'd realized, because Frank got me up one night to come and join them. And I was half asleep and I didn't take any notice, no interest at all, found it all thoroughly boring, and went back to bed. Had I realized I was going to write about it, I would, of course, written it more detailed, but I didn't. But yes, people came, and he was okay for the first 4 days. And by Thursday, the Mothers of Invention arrived and the equipment arrived. And once they arrived, he didn't really have any need for any more other rock stars to come to the house. And when they came, they got the message very quickly that Frank wasn't really into them. He wasn't, he did not socialize with other rock stars. He didn't. He wasn't interested. He was more interested in film people, the people he made films with. He did spend time with them.
Right.
When the Pink Floyd came, Roger Waters and his colleague, he took them to the studio with him, but all he would do was play them his music. He wouldn't socialize.
Right. That was just single focus for
It's all
him.
business.
When I had my birthday party, we had to sit and listen to his music on my birthday party.
Right.
And he showed film of the Mothers of Invention he'd taken. And that's how my birthday party went. He was so focused on that all the time. Yeah.
Right.
But to finish off your question, by Thursday, he did not want any of them coming anymore. And when they arrived after that, he stayed at his desk. He didn't move to the sofa. He would stay at his desk and they would wonder why they'd come, and they would go and come back again.
Right. And it wasn't a party house by any means.
No, and that's one of the things that makes me very cross, because there's lots of videos on YouTube about the log cabin and about Frank Zappa's time there. And there's 2 of them that talk about the mad parties that were at the log cabin when Frank Zappa was there. There was not one single party. It was like a monastery in there. Although there were 11 of us living there, we had to tiptoe around him. He was working all the time. We didn't dare make any noise. Moon, the little baby, was not allowed to go in the living room where he worked while he was working. It was a very austere environment, really. Although we had lots of fun, honestly. But that was when Frank wasn't there. Yes, so he was working all the time. That's all he wanted, was to work.
Right.
And he rehearsed with the Mothers every day. Every day.
Right.
So when he rehearsed, writing, composing, rehearsed, writing, composing. That was his life. He ate at the piano. He did not eat with us, never came in the kitchen to eat, except to come and find food in the fridge. And he would take out some, what do you call those long American sausages, frankfurters.
Hot dogs.
And he would take them out and sniff them. How long have these been here, sort of thing, to see if it was okay to eat them. It was chaotic, really. Yeah,
Right.
except it wasn't, because it was very controlled as well.